Hello, this is Tom Fredrickson with Montesano Today. There's only one real story going on, and that's the overreach going on around the world. Well, not all the way around the world, just in certain parts. North Korea, China, Canada, and here in Washington State under our own dictator, Jay Inslee. But we're going to do Jay Inslee at another time. I want to talk today a little bit about Canada. And for some background for those of you outside of the area, Canada is just right up there. A couple-hour drive with traffic, and you're in Vancouver, Canada. One of the most beautiful places, formerly one of the most beautiful places you would ever want to see. It's the only reason I have a passport. Didn't used to have a passport, but now you have to have a passport to get into Canada. I'm not so sure I'll ever be back there again. You have to understand, before we get into the meat of this, a little bit about the history of Canada. And I'm always a little hesitant sometimes talking about other countries, other world leaders, because I don't like it when those guys talk about our guys. Joe Biden is a complete waste of space, but he's our waste of space to deal with, not somebody else in another country. But I'm going to make an exception on this. Canada never went through what we went through here in the United States, so it's hard for us to really comprehend their mindset. We had a revolution. We threw the king off. We don't like bowing down to kings. We don't like, it's just not in our DNA. Canada, on the other hand, if you look back during the Revolutionary War, when they started to see things going badly here in what would become the United States of America, the ones real loyal to the king, where did they head? They just marched their little rear ends up into Canada. It wasn't that populated back then. It didn't really turn into a huge population center until the Revolutionary War, with all the Tories fleeing the United States and those rebels, those people that they would certainly jail today for not bowing down and respecting the king and wanting to have their own self-determination. So while we grew up in a society generation after generation that venerates individual rights, state rights, the rule of law, a constitution, free speech, the right to bear arms, everything basic that revolved around that revolutionary period in our founding, Canada had just the opposite. Their DNA baked in is one of subservience to the state. Now, they may not admit it or even be aware of it, but it is. It is there. It's taught in their schools. It's in their daily life. It's in their history. It's the way they collectively think. The king, although there is not a king, really, like there used to be, it's that mindset of subserving yourself, submitting to the state. You are a small cog. Your life, your family is secondary to the collective whole as decided by one man. And forget about their parliament. It's just a little rubber stamp. One of the most corrupt places on the face of the earth. So if you understand that mindset about Canada, you can understand why they reacted the way they did when some of the people stood up recently, drove their trucks to Ottawa, honked their horns. My God, the collective mindset of these Canadians, and if you've ever read some of their comments on the social media, I mean, you just shake your head. And we hear a bunch of people that are going to Ottawa, giving up their lives for the basic concept of freedom, of being able to decide what goes in your own body. If you're pregnant, you don't want to take some stupid vaccine, you don't have to. But the whole thought of somebody saying no to the king is just mind-blowing to them. They can't imagine living in a world that they aren't dictated to on every aspect of their life. And that's why you saw Justin Trudeau go full dictator. It's sad. It really is, from our standpoint here in the United States. From the Canadian standpoint, outside of the people that actually care about their freedom, It's a wonderful thing, and they're quite happy that they're jailing political dissidents, keeping people prisoner, putting up checkpoints around their cities. By some reports, over 100 different checkpoints in the city of Ottawa right now. Think about that for a second. Now, most of you are too young to remember East Germany. The buzz around social media and everywhere else, newspaper articles by these little 20-something, 30-something journalists, I use that word loosely, is that it's all Nazi, it's akin to Nazi Germany. No, it isn't. It's nothing like Nazi Germany. What this is like is East Germany in the 1970s. That's what it's like. And you've got a closed border. You can't get out of Canada without permission of the government now and following their little edicts on their little COVID thing. Can't get into Canada. Can't travel around Canada. Can't associate with people that disagree with Justin Trudeau. They'll put you in jail and freeze your bank accounts. It's a state of permanent and perpetual martial law. I don't care what you call it. You can call it emergency decree. I don't know. There's a half a dozen different terms for it. But it is martial law. And the reason you can say that is because all of us here in the United States, well, with the exception of your average liberal, look at a police officer and say, there's a guy that gets up in the morning, puts on a bulletproof vest to go to work that will protect us, pull us out of burning cars. If you have a problem, you can call them, they will show up, and you have a reasonable expectation of not being beaten and jailed for calling them. Reasonable. It's a covenant between us and the police, which are us, by the way. But in Canada, what you saw were nothing but a bunch of jackbooted thugs. Then again, not Nazi thugs, completely different type of thug. East German Stasi thugs. And if you looked at their eyes, read their text messages they're sending back and forth to each other over this, you'll see just how much they enjoyed kicking the snot out of people who dared speak up against the King, Justin Trudeau. They were going to put them in their place, and they just kneed them and ran them over with horses. They're thoroughly enjoying everything they're doing. This is what passes for police now in the country of Canada. Why we haven't heard an outcry from national law enforcement associations here, not only in Washington State, the bordering Canada, but across the country itself, other LEOs, other law enforcement personnel, is mind-blowing. It speaks volumes. How they could allow that to go by without comment, without condemnation, that type of behavior by police, then they're still calling themselves police in Canada, is going to do lasting damage to police in developed democratic countries such as ourselves going forward. They're nothing but goons. Now, what's the future of Canada? They're completely under the thumb of a dictator. Complete. There is no rule of law in Canada. It is the whim of Justin Trudeau. And when you live under the whim of one man, you've got a problem. There is no court access. All these people that are arresting, the bank accounts they're seizing, they have no rights in court under their martial law. And it's not going away. The future of Canada is quite simple. It's not safe to visit. I can't imagine myself crossing that border, and if you cross that border on a vacation, to go fishing at Banff, to go skiing. I don't care where you go. The day you enter Canada, and you can take this to the bank, your social media history, everything about you will be studied by some 1984 Orwellian clerk in some office doing a deep background check on you. And if you ever, forget about donating $20 to the Freedom Convoy, if you ever liked a tweet, if you have a friend on Facebook whose relative was somehow associated with the Freedom Convoy, I don't care what the association, you will be flagged. And you will be followed. You will, well, not 24 hours a day, depending on how many tweets you liked, I guess. But it's going to be Red China surveillance on you every minute you're in this country of Canada. And God help you if you step out of line, look at the wrong book in a bookstore, talk to the wrong guy in a cafe, go to an internet someplace, go to the Drudge Report and read a couple of articles about something that has anything to do with threatening Canada's military rule of law, and you will pay a price. They'll make you pay a price as an example to the next guy coming in. So what's the future of Canada with all this? To wrap this up, it's going to be bleak. Not just for the citizens, but economically, it's going to spill over into our border. It's going to have ramifications with our LEOs and law enforcement. Are people going to be looking at our law enforcement the same way? There's a number of issues here that I don't think people have thought through. Those truckers, they started something, and it's going to be very interesting to see where it ends up. But for right now, I have a travel advisory I'm issuing first and foremost for American citizens to stay away from Canada. It's not safe. For right now, this is Tom Frederickson with Montesano Today, and we'll talk to you next time.